You're listening to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, here to review AEW Collision from June 24th, 2023. It is the second ever edition of AEW Collision, and how did it favor this week? Of course, we have Forbidden Door tomorrow night on pay-per-view. Overall, man, I thought Collision was a great show. Was it better than last week? I'm going to actually go out on a limb and actually say yes. I actually thought the show was much better than last week because of the fact that you had a lot of things, really get in their comfort zone. That's what you really want. And I mean that in the good way, because usually when it comes to wrestling shows getting in their comfort zone, a lot of people mention the bad. But in this case, I'm actually mentioning the good. I'm talking about the commentary team. Nigel McGuinness and Kevin Kelly definitely got a hold of what their job was, and they definitely just flat out did so well on this show. Last week they did very well, but there was a lot of, I don't want to say technical problems, but, they weren't really that comfortable in the position that they were because of the fact that it was the first show. But, of course, when they got to the second week, they definitely got the hang of what they were supposed to do, and they sold you on what you were watching. Another thing, this show flowed very, very, very well. One of my biggest complaints when it comes to AEW Dynamite, it's not necessarily the way the show flows, because in most weeks the show flows really well, and by the time, you're watching the show, you're already at the second hour. That is the most cases with Dynamite, but what I mean is letting stuff breathe on the show. Because usually when something big happens on an AEW Dynamite, the next segment, they immediately go to the next segment, whether it's a backstage interview or a video package. They are that quick. It's because of the fact that they cram a lot of shit into one show, and that is the case with Dynamite. On Collision, they don't cram a lot of things on the show, and they really let stuff breathe, and that is the biggest takeaway that I can give you guys for Collision so far. But, of course, Collision is on the trend of being very, very, very different from Dynamite, to the point where I honestly believe that I'm possibly watching a different promotion here, because the presentation, everything about Collision just screams different, and that is exactly what you want from a secondary/B show. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're possibly on the verge of AEW Collision being the actual A show for AEW. A lot of people are saying that, because if you really think about it, Collision is the CM Punk show. But overall, man, thoughts on the show? I 100% enjoyed the show for what it was. Fantastic stuff. Of course, we have Forbidden Door. Very mixed reactions. Of course, Collision tonight was in Toronto, of course, at the Scotiabank Arena. And CM Punk got a lot of boos, got some cheers, but really a big, big, big mixed reaction from the audience. And honestly, man, I'm 100% here for it, because CM Punk himself even played with the crowd when he made his entrance. So that was great to see. We had the partner revealed for Sting and Darby Allin in their six-man matchup at Forbidden Door. Of course, Sting and Darby Allin will be teaming up with a mystery partner, that being Tetsuya Naito, to take on Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Minoru Suzuki, or you should say the Suzuki Gods. The pop that Tetsuya Naito got, of course, this is Tetsuya Naito's first appearance on AEW programming, and honestly, man, I was so fucking happy, man. When Naito came out, I literally was marking the hell out, dancing to his theme song. If y'all never listened to Tetsuya Naito's theme song, absolutely just give it a listen. We had Swerve Strickland taking on Hiroshi Tanahashi. Very mixed reactions when it came to this match. A lot of people were talking about Hiroshi Tanahashi and the way he favored it in the ring. Honestly, he's not really favoring that well in the ring. I mean, watch his match against Daniel Garcia at Supercard of Honor. But I still have hope for the MJF match. I thought Swerve Strickland did exactly what he could do, and I still think MJF will definitely sell his ass off when it comes to Hiroshi Tanahashi, and will make Hiroshi Tanahashi, no matter what, I don't want to say shape, but no matter what condition he is in, he will make him look 110% in that match, because MJF is a guy you can definitely trust in the ring, in my opinion. But I'll be talking about that on this review as well. We had Andrade versus Brody King. A great match as well, just like last week with Andrade facing off against Buddy Matthews. This was an intense battle, but this week it actually ended in a DQ, which was very weird because very rarely do we get to see DQ finishes in AEW. I'm so accustomed to DQ finishes in WWE to the point where I just don't like DQ finishes at all. So I really did not like the finish, but I'm going to actually give AEW a pass here because I feel like they're definitely building towards something. But if DQ finishes are common on either AEW Dynamite or AEW Collision, we're going to have a major problem, because very rarely do you see Collision. Very rarely do you see DQ finishes on an AEW show. Christian Cage, fantastic promo. We had, of course, the main event with CMFTR and Ricky Starks taking on Bullet Club Gold and the GUNNS. Great main event. Absolutely fantastic main event. Some spots were absolutely insane, like that suicide dive that Cash Wheeler hit, literally damn near hitting the barricade. It was crazy. But nonetheless, fantastic match. Everybody gave it their all, and everybody looked 100% fantastic. I mean, bro, Jay White got the pin on Ricky Starks, and Bullet Club Gold gets the win. You love to see it. Jay White is not buried. A lot of people, when Jay White first came into AEW, were saying, oh my God, Jay White, he's going to get lost in the shuffle. And look, on many instances in AEW, a lot of people have gotten lost in the shuffle. Think about it. Look where Keith Lee is now. Is he doing great things in AEW? Absolutely not. He's not. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. He is not doing great things right now in AEW. Where is Keith Lee at this point? Let's be real. But Jay White, they know the caliber of the talent that Jay White has. So everybody that's been saying, Jay White has been underutilized, go fuck yourselves, because you clearly do not know what you are talking about. If you want to use that argument, use it on somebody like Keith Lee, because that is somebody that has been greatly underutilized, in my opinion. But we're going to be talking about Collision. But before I get on with all this craziness regarding AEW Collision, make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And, as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Of course, if you guys missed it, the SmackDown review is up on the channel. We talk about SmackDown that happened, of course, this past Friday, and honestly, it was a show that offered nothing of importance whatsoever. And I mean that wholeheartedly, man. It was really a nothing show. Roman Reigns is greatly missed on the show because if you think about it, he and the Bloodline make the show. We did have the Usos on the show, but really there was nothing building towards their Civil War match, the tag team match that's going to be happening in London at Money in the Bank. So really, it was a nothing show whatsoever. Also, if you guys missed it, episode 19 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast, we talk about CM Punk. Of course, CM Punk, every time when CM Punk is in the news, there's always drama related to CM Punk. But a top name apparently left the building this past Wednesday on Dynamite in a bad mood after CM Punk's appearance, and he called CM Punk's return, and he described it as a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Yeah, I had a lot to say about this, so if you guys haven't checked out episode 19 of the WrestleHavoc Podcast, both the SmackDown review and this video will be in the link in the description below. All right, let's get on to AEW Collision. Of course, the show kicks off with Tony Schiavone. Yes, Tony Schiavone is in the ring, and he's going to be interviewing Sting and Darby Allin, because we do not know who Sting and Darby Allin's partner is for Forbidden Door. But instead, Chris Jericho and Minoru Suzuki show up. And we get a bunch of, Chris immediately says, "Shut up, Schiavone," on Tony Schiavone. After that, he says, "Don't try and shamelessly ponder to him. He isn't from Toronto. He's from Winnipeg, you idiots." I definitely heard that before. "And we're in a bad mood. Anyways, we're pissed off. Because Sting and Darby Allin kept on waiting for days and days before telling who their partners are. Where are they? You will get, Who will get you that's tougher than Minoru Suzuki? Who are you going to get that's crazier and sexier than Chris Jericho? Even though he isn't here tonight and he's crazed that him and Suzuki are friends, we get a bunch of Suzuki chants. And even though Sammy isn't with them, he's still one of the greatest high flyers in this generation. So Sting, who will you get that will intimidate us? And they are not waiting because they know who their partner is. And Chris ends up threatening Tony Schiavone because Tony clearly knows who the partner is going to be. Sting and Darby Allin come out, and as soon as Sting and Darby Allin come out, or I should say the music of Sting plays, when Jericho is literally threatening this man's life with Floyd, the baseball bat, immediately Tony Schiavone is like, "It's Sting!" That was funny as hell. They come out, we get a bunch of holy shit chants by the crowd, of course, because Sting and Chris Jericho are facing off once again. And, of course, a match between Sting and Chris Jericho is a never-before-seen match, ladies and gentlemen. We get a shut up to the people, says Jericho. No, you shut up, Chris, because Darby Allin has something to say. He says, he points to the camera and says, Sammy, he realizes he isn't here, and maybe he realizes he doesn't need Chris Jericho. If he shows up and stands with Chris and Suzuki, he will kick your ass. And just like their tag partner kicked Chris Jericho's ass, and he points to Jericho, at the Tokyo Dome. And as soon as he said at the Tokyo Dome, the crowd knew exactly who it was. Hardcore audience, my ass. Everybody knew who it was. And they were chanting, Naito, Naito, Naito. And he says he thinks she knows who it is. And what happens? Tetsuya Naito's music plays, the opening riff. And who is it? Mr. Destino, Tetsuya Naito, tranquilo, comes out. And bro, the crowd went dog shit for this man. Dog shit. Like, Tetsuya Naito comes out, Naito and Jericho face off, and what happens is Chris Jericho and Minoru Suzuki retreat. Overall thoughts on this moment, per se, that happened on AEW Collision. This was fantastic. I loved this moment. I mean, we haven't seen Tetsuya Naito at all on AEW television, so I was greatly, happy when we get to see Tetsuya Naito on the show because, I'm not the biggest watcher of New Japan, but I've definitely seen a lot of the matches of Tetsuya Naito, and he's been one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of Tetsuya Naito. He's just phenomenal at what he does. He's very charismatic, in my opinion, and just is so great. He's so good in the ring, in my opinion. But, man, when he showed up at the Scotiabank Arena, the crowd just went absolutely dog shit. Now, I know a lot of people on social media were talking about Goldberg could possibly be the partner. Now, if you really think about it, Goldberg kind of makes sense because Chris Jericho and Goldberg definitely had a history with one another and a very real-life history, if you really think about it, because both of these men did not like each other whatsoever. But it kind of wouldn't have made sense for Forbidden Door. It would make sense per se, but at the same time, it wouldn't have made sense. Now, do I think Goldberg is going to be on his way towards AEW? Absolutely. Do I see him being a part of Wembley Stadium? Absolutely. He's definitely going to be a part of Allin. It's just not confirmed yet, but we definitely know that's definitely going to be happening. But since this show is called Forbidden Door, it would be pretty obvious that Sting and Darby Allin was going to be teaming with somebody from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it is Tetsuya Naito. Fantastic stuff. The six-man match is going to be phenomenal, and Forbidden Door just got a whole lot better, in my opinion. So it's now going to be Sting, Darby Allin, and Tetsuya Naito taking on Chris Jericho, Minoru Suzuki, and Sammy Guevara tomorrow night. All right. After that, we get a video package from Miro. Talks about how he's been in exile for over a year, and then he was summoned. When the coward spoke, he told him he would be his favorite champion once again. With his blessings and muscles, he would never lose once again. All he needed to do was praise him. And then he realized that this coward was an idiot. The Redeemer fears no man or God. Now he knows what he needs to do. He needs to be righteous without seeking reward. He renounces his God, his beautiful wife, and his gold. And he is Miro. Because he is Miro. And he is gutless. I loved these video packages when he was the TNT champion, where it would just be pure silence, and Miro would just speak about his God and all that stuff. Now, Miro is all alone, and he's going to be on his own. Great to see these Miro video packages back. I've always been a fan of them. But where is Miro? What is Miro going to be doing? You know, he's definitely going to be on Collision. That's definitely going to be his show. But what are they definitely going to be doing with Miro? Could it be a scenario in which he eyes the international championship? I mean, if there is a guy that could beat Orange Cassidy, you know, I don't know about y'all, but I'm definitely pointing towards Miro. Miro could definitely be the guy to beat Orange Cassidy for that international championship. But who knows? Great seeing Miro in this video package. Fantastic stuff. Hopefully they can keep the ball rolling with Miro going forward. After that, we got Swerve Strickland taking on the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Hiroshi Tanahashi. A lot of mixed reactions for this match. I thought the match was fine. Swerve did everything that he could in this match. Yes, and I've talked about this before, Hiroshi Tanahashi is not in the prime of his career. He's like, what, 46 years old? He's not in the prime of his career anymore, and you could tell in his last few matches. I mean, the last match that I saw was the match he had at Super Card of Honor, because once again, I do not follow New Japan Pro Wrestling at all. But the last match I saw of Hiroshi Tanahashi was at Super Card of Honor, and he definitely looked, you know, a little slippy on a couple of fronts. But I will say this, he did look slippy in this match with Swerve Strickland. But that is not to say that the botches were like very noticeable. Like when there was a certain botch, it wasn't a scenario in which the commentators kind of sold it as like a guy doing an actual move, and then, you know, they actually sold it as, oh wow, what a nice move, even though it was an actual botch. When they actually botched, they actually kind of saved themselves if you really think about it. But Hiroshi Tanahashi did slip up a little bit in this match. Swerve did everything he could. Swerve looked good, and he tried to make Hiroshi Tanahashi look great, and I feel like he did. But I will say, Hiroshi Tanahashi is past his prime 100%. I talked about this for weeks, ever since MJF versus Tanahashi was announced. But that being said, really the main event was what happened after the match. But we'll go through the match. We get a bunch of Tanahashi chants by the crowd. Both lock up. Swerve sends Tanahashi into the corner. We get a back elbow by Tanahashi, and then he hits a crossbody. Tanahashi wants him with basically gives him his air guitar. He does this and just gives him his air guitar, which is the funniest shit ever. Swerve then mocks it, and after that we get a drop kick onto the knee of Swerve. We then get a roll up by Swerve, and then he hits a kick on Tanahashi. Tanahashi goes to the outside, but then Swerve mocks Tanahashi once again with his air guitar. We get a low blow without the referee looking. Swerve goes for repeated rights, but then Swerve is in control over Tanahashi. Tanahashi goes over the top rope, and then he holds on. We get a head scissors, taking Swerve to the outside. At this point, Tanahashi goes for the baseball slide, but then Swerve catches him on the apron. Swerve goes for a pump kick from the apron, and then once we're back from commercial break, Tanahashi and Swerve exchange shots. Both grab each other's hairs. We get a forearm by Tanahashi. We get a series of right elbows by Tanahashi, and then he slams Swerve to the mat. Tanahashi goes to the second rope, and he goes for a somersault senton. And then we get a cover and a near fall. Then we get a rolling flatliner by Swerve, and then we get a cover into near fall once again. Tanahashi goes for the roll-up, and then we get a near fall. We get an inside cradle by Tanahashi, and then we get a near fall. Tanahashi ends up going for the dragon screw, and then he goes for the sling blade. And then we get a cover by Tanahashi and a near fall. Now, I will say, man, when Tanahashi goes for these sling blades, the sling blades look a little bit rough, because usually when you see a guy do a sling blade, for example, like Finn Balor, like his sling blade is like smooth as fuck. When it came to Tanahashi in this particular match, I'm talking about this particular match alone, so those sling blades did not look like sling blades. I'm just going to say that right here, right now. So he goes to the top, and then we get a frog splash, but then Swerve gets the knees up. We get a cover by Swerve and a near fall. After that, Swerve goes and misses the pump kick. After that, we get a kick to the knee, and then we get a kick to the face of Tanahashi. Swerve goes to the top, and then he misses the Swerve stomp. We get a sling blade once again by Tanahashi. Tanahashi goes to the top, and he falls off the top. And this is the thing that I was talking about. Tanahashi is not in the prime of his career, and he fell off the top. But he goes back to the top. Swerve then goes to the top, but then we get a series of right hands by Tanahashi, taking Swerve down. Tanahashi ends up going for the frog splash, and we get a cover, and Tanahashi wins the match. Of course, after this, MJF's music plays, and you would assume MJF was going to be coming out on this show. But instead, MJF doesn't actually physically show up, but instead he's on the Tron. and talks about how he wasn't dumb enough that, these people were dumb enough that would think that he would show up. But here's the deal. At Forbidden Door, he will embarrass him. He spoke to Tony Khan, and he made a little agreement that he will only show up if they are on match 1. He ain't staying in a dumb place like Canada, and he holds the AEW World title and talks about how he really thinks he wants to spend his time watching a bunch of indie jabronis from Japan. At Forbidden Door, he will take that air guitar, take it between his legs, and shove it straight up his ass because he isn't on the level of the devil. Overall, I already said my piece on the match, but what happened after with MJF being involved? Now, what's interesting is that MJF is actually going to be on Collision next week, which is going to be great to see. He's actually going to be wrestling. Now, when it comes to MJF being on the Tron and talking about how he's going to be opening the show, I think that is actually a great position for a guy like MJF on a show like Forbidden Door. A lot of people, I could easily think about it right now, possibly the narrative coming in tomorrow when it comes to MJF is, bro, he's the AEW World Champion and is defending his title in the opening match. Now, if it's any other pay-per-view, I'd have a big problem with that because this is your world champion and he is opening the show. But I'm actually not going to be having a problem here because of the fact that MJF has a running narrative that he hates New Japan Pro Wrestling. So why the fuck would he be there? Of course he's going to be opening the show because he doesn't like fucking New Japan. So it makes total sense for MJF not to really give a shit. So it makes total sense that for him, for character-wise, it makes total sense for him to open the show. But do I think the match with Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to be great after this match? Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the match was bad because it was fun. Like, Swerve did everything that he could. Tanahashi did everything that he could, and it's clear that Tanahashi is past his prime. But I've always told people MJF is going to sell his ass off in a great way against Tanahashi. MJF is a very, very, very old school wrestler. He encompasses a lot of old school, ideologies when it comes to in-ring stuff, and he encompasses a lot of, new school ideologies, and he encompasses that old school philosophy and new school philosophy, and he kind of merges them all together. That's basically MJF for you in ring. MJF showed you that he can basically wrestle. I don't want to say any style, but he can wrestle that indie style that a lot of people tend to say. He can wrestle the high-flying style. He can wrestle, ground and pound. Now, could you say this could be MJF's test, wrestling, the Japanese strong style? Maybe, but MJF, man, he is going to make Tanahashi look like $1 million, and I feel like Tanahashi is going to make MJF look like $1 million as well. Even though Tanahashi is past his prime, MJF is a very, very, very old school wrestler, and I feel like he will know what he's doing once we head to that match at Forbidden Door. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. After that, we got Andrade El Idolo taking on Brody King. This was a fantastic match. I absolutely loved this match. Andrade, of course, didn't get the win, as well as Brody King didn't get the win. Well, I believe Andrade definitely got the win via DQ, but I don't view that as an actual win, to be quite honest with you. But both men, man, great stuff. Great in-ring workers, and Andrade looked absolutely great. I love what they're doing with Andrade and the House of Black, so keep that story going. But let's go through the match. Both men lock up. We get a chop missed by Brody King. We then get a side headlock by Andrade. Brody then no-sells a shoulder tackle. After that, Brody misses, I believe it was a chop. I completely messed up my notes right there. My notes are terrible. We get a drop kick onto the knee of Brody King, and then we get a boot by Andrade. He then goes to the top, and then he goes for the head scissors from behind. Andrade then poses on the ropes. Typical Andrade. Brody goes to the outside, and then Andrade tells Julie Hart to get out of there. Of course, it's a common occurrence just like last week where she was about to grab his mask. Brody is on the apron picking up Andrade, and then Andrade escapes the Death Valley driver attempt. And then he pushes Brody to the post. Andrade goes to the top, and then he hits a moonsault on the outside. We get a cover back into the ring by Andrade, and we get a 1 count. After that, Andrade works on the knee of Brody King. He tries to pick him up, but then Brody drives his elbows onto Andrade. We then get a back elbow by Andrade, but then we get a series of chops by Andrade. And then Brody King takes him to the ropes. We get a chop on Andrade, sending him to the outside. Once we're back from commercial break, we get a furious chop by Brody King. Andrade tries to fight back, but then we get a chop by Andrade. Brody then picks him up and drives him onto the ropes. And then we get repeated beats onto the chest of Andrade. Who does Brody King think he is? He thinks he's Sheamus? Jesus Christ. And then he chokes Andrade. Andrade escapes. We then get a jawbreaker by Andrade back into the ring. He sweeps Brody, sending him headfirst onto the middle turnbuckle. After that, Andrade is on the apron. And then we get a right hand by Andrade, followed by a dragon screw. After that, Andrade goes to the top. He hits a crossbody. And then he hits another dragon screw after that. He goes for the running right hand. Andrade tries to pick him up, but then we get a clothesline into the corner by Andrade. And then he goes for the double knees. After that, we get a cover by Andrade and a near fall. Brody then drives him into the corner. And then we get a boot by Andrade. We get a rolling right hand, or I should say a discus clothesline or a discus lariat, whatever you want to call it, by Brody King. He picks up Andrade, but then Brody's knee gives out. He picks him back up, and he hits the Death Valley driver into the corner, and that spot looked absolutely fucking brutal. After that, we get a running cannonball into the corner by Brody King. And then he picks up Andrade, and then Andrade escapes. He hits the chop block, and then he applies the figure four. Julia Hart is up on the apron. She has his mask. Andrade tries to go for the discus clothesline, but he misses. And then he hits a back elbow. And then he applies the figure four. Shades of Ric Flair. He tries to apply the figure eight. And what happens is Buddy Matthews comes in and causes a disqualification. Hits a right on the referee. Brody goes for the discus clothesline, and then he ends up going for the Dante's Inferno. At this point, Malachi Black is on the Titantron, and the lights go out, and that was that. Overall, my thoughts on this match. This was great stuff. Every time when Andrade wrestles, it demands your attention. Andrade has always been fantastic at what he does. It's great to see him back on AEW television, and they're finally giving some sort of direction with Andrade and El Idolo, giving him a feud with the House of Black. Most likely, we're definitely going to be getting a one-on-one match between Andrade and Malachi Black, which is a feud that I 100% want to see. Of course, I believe they did have a feud back in 2017, 2018 in NXT. Correct me if I'm wrong, roughly around there, and their feud was fantastic as well. But, again, I definitely want to see it in AEW. But besides the House of Black and Andrade feud, let's talk about the match itself. The match was great, but I was not really the biggest fan of the DQ finish. I feel like they could have done something a little more creative. What that little thing that could be creative could be, I have no idea. Maybe that was their only way out. But again, hopefully these DQ finishes do not become a common occurrence on Collision especially. But I genuinely believe that this was just kind of a one-off to only continue on the story with Andrade and Brody King. But still, you know, I'm so used to DQ finishes in WWE that I just do not want to see it on television in AEW. And very rarely we get those DQ finishes on television, which is great to see in AEW because AEW just like, you know, they think broader when it comes to just DQ finishes, and that is what I like about them. But still, you know, DQ finish, I'm not really the biggest fan of. So that's my thoughts on that. But Brody King and Andrade, they kept Andrade strong by not having him be pinned by Brody King. But again, it was still a DQ finish, and I'm not really that big of a fan of DQ finishes in my opinion. But those are my thoughts on that. All right. Tony Schiavone interviews Captain Charisma, Mr. Instant Classic, Christian Cage. And yes, I called him Mr. Instant Classic because if you guys are old school TNA fans, you guys know he was called the Instant Classic. But Tony Schiavone interviews the fake TNT champion, Christian Cage, and I call him the fake TNT champion because Christian Cage is coming out with the goddamn TNT championship, even though Luchasaurus was the one that beat Wardlow last week on Collision. He asks how he feels about being back in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We get a bunch of Christian Cage chants. You can tell, man, the crowd in Toronto just absolutely loved Christian. They love this man. And he says, you know, Tony, he left last week's show in Chicago, and he was in a really bad mood for a lot of reasons. But he knew in a few days he would be back in Toronto with the TNT Championship. Now, he is in a worse mood, and then that immediately changed the tone of the fans, which was the funniest shit ever. Right there, right then and there, Christian Cage is so good that he can just control the crowd. And he talks about how he's in a worse mood, and the moment he stood off that plane, all his thoughts and emotions were flowing back, and he will be honest, this city breathes losers, and it just basically became populated with a bunch of losers. But they're okay with mediocrity. You're basically Toronto make-believes. Finally, they try to go to a playoff round, but when they do, they choke. Status quo for Toronto. The only glimmer of hope was in 2019 when the Raptors won the NBA championship, and that was because of Kawhi Leonard. And he called him up because he has him on the phone, and he says, "What are you doing here? He will now carry the burden of these losers for the rest of his life. You need to leave right now and become a champion." Every time when Christian Cage speaks fast, it's so fucking funny. I don't know why. It's just hilarious. He talks about how he needs to get out now. But speaking of the TNT Championship, we're going to have a little bit of a couple of housekeeping rules. We're going to have no more open challenges. You're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to want it. He won't sit there and pretend like he created the championship. And it's not going to be some vanity project like another guy who used to ride the roads here in AEW. That was a little shot right there to Mr. Cody Rhodes because, of course, he was the very first TNT champion. He will take this title to new heights, and it will be the most prestigious title in AEW, and they will remain the face of TNT now and forever. Oh, Christian Cage, oh, Christian Cage, oh, Christian Cage. What things have I not said about this great human being? This man is fucking awesome. You know, Christian Cage is, I don't know if I said it on the show, but he is so much better as a heel than a babyface. He just is. Everything about Christian, just from walking out to the ring. Now, he didn't walk into the ring, I believe, with the turtleneck, but like if, there can be any, Dynamite, he would literally walk out during the summertime with the fucking turtleneck. You can tell this guy's a douchebag. And that is great to see. Just by him wearing a fucking turtleneck is the funniest shit in the world. Not only that, him coming out with the TNT Championship knowing damn fucking well he wasn't the guy that beat Wardlow for it is the funniest shit ever. And again, the most douchebag move any heel could possibly do. And of course, the shit he says on the microphone. Christian Cage's heel run in AEW has been nothing but fantastic. I don't care what anybody says. He says the most offensive shit, and he doesn't give a damn. There's a whole compilation on TikTok there's like this one TikTok of just a compilation of Christian Cage with this theme song playing in the background, and Christian Cage just screaming at Jungle Boy's mom, "You raised a piece of shit." That was the night where he turned heel on Jungle Boy last year. Again, Christian Cage, he comes off as, of course, like an asshole, like a piece of shit human being. But at the same time, he comes off as very entertaining. And I love how he gives you that balance of being a douchebag and just being flat out entertaining. And he just gives you that balance. That is what makes Christian Cage so well at what he does. Christian Cage is fucking fantastic. He's one of my favorite things in AEW right now. If you ever have a chance, please give this man a raise. Just please give this man a raise. All right. In our next segment, or it wasn't really a segment, we had a video package of the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Of course, tomorrow we're going to be having CM Punk taking on Satoshi Kojima in the quarterfinals of the Owen tournament. And most likely CM Punk is definitely going to be getting the win. After that, we got Willow Nightingale taking on Nyla Rose. This was an okay match. It wasn't the best match, but I'm a big fan of Willow Nightingale. Of course, tomorrow night, Willow Nightingale is going to be facing Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Championship at Forbidden Door. Is she going to win that match? Of course not. She's not. Toni Storm is going to have that title for a while. But I think she's going to bring the best out of Toni Storm. But let's go through the match. We got a shoulder tackle by Willow Nightingale. Nyla, at this point, is in control. After that, we get an enziguri by Willow. And then we get a chop into the corner by Willow. At this point, Nyla blocks the second chop. We get a knuckle lock by both women. And then we get a roll-up by Willow. And then we get a drop kick by Willow Nightingale. At this point, Nyla retreats to the outside. And then Marina Shafir, who came to the ring with Nyla Rose, blocks Willow. And then Willow basically walks into a forearm by Nyla Rose. And then she sends Willow to the ring post. Once you're back in commercial break, Nyla picks up Willow and slams her down. She misses the leg drop on Willow. And then we get an elbow by Willow Nightingale. Then she goes for the boot. She sends Nyla into the corner. We get a running hip attack. After that, Willow goes to the top. She hits the running shotgun dropkick. Or I should say, she goes for the shotgun dropkick off the top. She didn't run. She went for the shotgun dropkick off the top. And then she tries to go for the Dr. Bomb. But then Willow tries to pick her up. Nyla ends up hitting a suplex, but then Nyla rose through. And then what happens is she hits a front suplex on Willow. And then we get a cover by Nyla and a near fall. Willow gets taken into the corner. We then get repeated rights by Willow, but then Willow is up on the second rope. Nyla picks her up. Willow escapes. Willow goes for the pounce, period. Shades of Monty Brown, says Kevin Kelly on commentary. After that, we get a Dr. Bomb by Willow Nightingale, and we get a cover, and Willow Nightingale gets the win. After the match, the Outcasts. Oh, shit. Of course, it's... What good can a women's match be, of course, without interference of the Outcasts? The Outcasts surround the ring, but what happens? Sky Blue comes out with the chair for the save, which leads to the Outcasts to retreat. Even though the Outcasts are heels, they still look really stupid because they had the 3-on-1 advantage, so they could have still beat the shit out of Sky Blue. Even though she had a chair, they could have still beat the shit out of Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale, but clearly they didn't look at the numbers. But it was a 3-on-1 advantage still. But whatever. They retreat, and that was that. Is Willow Nightingale going to be winning the Women's Championship at Forbidden Door? Forget about it. That is not going to be happening. But I do see it being a very, very, very good match. Powerhouse Hobbs is in action, and his opponent is Jeremy Prophet. Hobbs takes him out. We get a series of running back elbows by Hobbs. He picks him up. Prophet escapes, and he tries to roll him up, but then he can't. Then he basically drives him from the front and the back, and with just shots, like absolutely insane. And he ends up hitting a Furious Lariat, and then we get a Spinebuster by Hobbs, and we get a cover, and Hobbs wins the match. A jobber squashing match. After that, we got our main event. We got CM Punk and FTR, teaming up with Ricky Starks to take on Bullet Club Gold, Switchblade, Jay White, Rock Hard, Juice Robinson, and the GUNNS. I don't know about y'all, but I'm starting to like the GUNNS more and more and more. Now I know I said my piece on the GUNNS, and really I don't know if I stated this. I probably did, and I probably forgot. But I started liking the GUNNS more when they came out to Many Men by 50 Cent. That was when I really was like, damn, you know what? Even though I don't like the GUNNS now, they're definitely going to be growing on me. And I said my piece on the GUNNS possibly joining Bullet Club Gold. I think they shouldn't join Bullet Club Gold, but from what it looks like, they may join Bullet Club Gold after that ending. And honestly, now that I think about it, maybe it's not the worst decision for them, because I'm not really the biggest fan of their current gimmicks. And if they join Bullet Club, they're probably going to have the same gimmicks, but still, they're going to be a little more douchebaggy. And of course, they're going to be mega fucking heels as, of course, joining Bullet Club. And they're going to be considered cool, in my opinion. But I will say this. The GUNNS, their fucking entrance is fantastic. Just the spiral shot of both Austin and Colton, y'all already sold me. Right then and there. You already sold me on the GUNNS. That's all I got to say about that. But what are my thoughts on this match? This match was great. If you want to talk about a TV main event, this was a great TV main event. Punk. Let's first talk about Punk. Punk got a lot of boos and a lot of cheers. I had the perception of he had more boos than cheers. When Punk made his entrance, FTR and Ricky Starks couldn't save him because the people in Toronto know what went down in September. Everybody knows what went down in September. But I will say, man, when Punk came out and he got the reaction that he got, Punk was smiling. Punk was smiling because he knew that they were going to boo the shit out of him. So he's really playing the crowd. And you really got to give respect to Punk, because Punk, for those that do not possibly know, which you guys should, Punk is a student of the game. Punk is a student of the game, and he knows the wrestling business. Once you get a negative reaction and you know that the crowd is going to be shitting on you, you play with the crowd. And that is exactly what CM Punk did in this scenario and throughout the majority of this whole match. Not only that, Punk in this match looked so much better than he did last week. Because if you really think about it, last week, even though I said Punk looked good, he didn't really wrestle a lot. And you can tell there was a little bit of ring rust when it came to CM Punk in the ring. In this match, it looked like he got way more comfortable in the ring. And you know what? Happy for you, Phil Brooks. Fantastic. He looked great in this match. But nonetheless, some of the spots were great, and Bullet Club Gold and the Guns actually got the win in this match. So we got heavy boos for CM Punk. Punk and Switchblade Jay White start. Jay tags in Mr. Juice Robinson. After that, both lock up. We got a shoulder tackle by Punk. Dax Harwood tags in. Both lock up once again. We get a shoulder tackle by Dax. We get a slam by Dax, and then we get a slam by Mr. Juice Robinson. After that, we get a side headlock takeover by Dax once again. Juice goes for a side slam, and then he ends up going for a senton on Dax. We get a cover and a 1 count. After that, Austin Gunn tags in. We get repeated rights by Austin, and then we get a chop by Dax. And then we get a snap suplex by Dax after that. After that, we get a cover and a 1 count. Cash makes the tag, and then we get a shoulder tackle on Austin and a dropkick on Colton. Cash goes for the uppercut, and then he goes for a chop on Cash. Ricky Starks makes the tag. We then get a back elbow by Starks. Starks goes old school by walking smoothly on the ropes. After that, he hits the old school, and then he goes for a chop on Juice Robinson. Jay White makes the tag. We get a right hand by Starks. We get a slap by Starks. Punk makes the tag, and as soon as CM Punk makes the tag, we get a very, very, very mixed reaction from Punk. It was very weird the way Toronto reacted, because if you think about it, when Punk made his entrance, flat out boos by the crowd in Toronto when CM Punk was making his entrance. But when he was wrestling in the ring, you could start to see, those CM Punk chants by the crowd. And even the commentators were mentioning on commentary, hey, this is not Chicago, basically acknowledging that CM Punk was going to be getting a mixed reaction with the crowd. Both lock up. We get a series of body shots by Punk. We get a chop by Punk into the corner. Jay White goes for a chop. Punk goes for a chop. Just both men just exchanging chops. Not as loud as the chops that Samoa Joe gave CM Punk last week on Collision, man. Those 2 chops that Samoa Joe gave CM Punk last week, fucking crazy. But back to the match. Punk goes for repeated rights. Punk picks him up. Jay White escapes. He tries to go for the Blade Runner, but then Punk escapes once again. Punk gets taken to the outside. At this point, the heels gang up on CM Punk, and a brawl breaks loose between both groups. Once we're back from commercial break, Dax and Juice are on the top. After that, he picks up Juice, Cash tags in, FTR go for the Doomsday Device, and then we get a cover into near fall when Jay White makes the save. Colton makes the tag, and then he sends Cash into the corner. We then get a dropkick by Colton Gunn. Cash then slingshots Colton, and then we get a cover by Cash and a near fall. We then get a roll-up by Cash, and then we get a chop by Cash. At this point, Punk makes the tag. Punk goes to the top, but then he drops the elbow. We then get a cover by Punk and a near fall. We then get a cover once again by Punk, and we get a kick out. After that, Punk goes for the neck breaker. We get a cover again and a near fall. Colton goes for a chop, and then tries to go for the high kick, that being CM Punk, but he misses. Austin makes the tag. Goes for repeated rights on Punk into the corner, but then Jay White tags in. We get a chop on Jay White, and then we get a chop on Punk, or I should say a chop by Jay White on CM Punk, I should say. He continues to be in control over Punk. Punk goes for, or I should say Jay White goes for the Dragon Screw on CM Punk, and he continues to work on the leg of Punk, and that was a common occurrence throughout this portion of the match. Later on, Austin makes the tag. He chops, we get a chop by Punk, and then we get a kick by Austin. Jay White tags in. He continues to work on Punk. Once we're back from commercial break once again, Jay White takes Punk to the top. And really, near the end of the match, that was really where the match started to get more intense. We get a chop by Jay White. Punk targets the eyes of Jay White. We get a crossbody by Punk. And then we get a chop by Punk, a chop by Jay White. This was literally a fucking chop war at this point. At this point, we get a right hand by Punk. And then we get repeated rights by Punk. Jay White goes for the chop once again. We get a running knee by Punk into the corner, and he goes for the twisting neck breaker after that. At this point, the Guns take out FTR. Juice Robinson is the legal man. He picks up Punk. Punk, almost gets hit with the GTS, but he blocks it. Punk goes for the high kick. At this point, the Guns are in the ring. Punk tags in Starks. Starks goes for repeated rights and lefts. He takes out everybody. We get a tornado DDT by Starks on Austin. After that, we get a cover and a near fall. At this point, everybody is in the ring. We get a backdrop by Dax on Dax by Jay White. After that, Starks is in the ring. Jay goes for the blind tag. We get a slam by Starks and a cover into near fall. We get a roll-up by Jay White into near fall. Slam by Starks countering the Blade Runner, but then we get a cover by Juice. We get a cover into near fall when Juice makes the save. Dax Harwood comes in. We get a pile driver on Juice. The Guns go for the 310 to Yuma. At this point, Cash is behind. And what happens, he clotheslines Austin into the corner. Cash throws Colton to the outside. And Cash Wheeler, man. This fucking guy, tope suicidas, suicide dives, whatever you want to call it. Those are a common occurrence on AEW. Any AEW match, you'll see a tope. Any AEW match, you'll see a tope spot. This tope spot was fucking different. Cash Wheeler is insane. If you want to talk about in-ring, yes, we can talk about Dax Harwood, but don't sleep on Cash Wheeler. This tope suicida spot was insane. This man launched himself, ran the ropes, and literally hit the most furious tope suicida I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And literally damn near hit his legs so hard onto the barricade, I was so afraid that Cash Wheeler was going to get injured. Because usually when it comes to injuries in AEW, sometimes they could be working you and sometimes they won't be working you, and it paranoids the shit out of me when it happens. But thankfully, Cash Wheeler was all right. But Cash Wheeler is an insane wrestler, man. This guy, everybody talks about Dax Harwood being the best in-ring performer of FTR. But, bro, do not sleep on Cash Wheeler, man. Cash Wheeler is top fucking notch. This man is insane. After that tope spot, I have more respect for Cash Wheeler than I already had for him. Because I always respected the dude. But after that, my respect, I will respect you forever, man. Holy shit. After that furious tope, Punk is on the top. We get a Uranagi by Jay. And then he hits we get a Uranagi on Punk. And this was a furious Uranagi. And then after that, Starks comes in. He gets hit with the Uranagi. Starks goes for the roll-up, and we get a near fall. Spear by Starks on Jay White. Spear on Colton. And then a spear on Austin. After that, Starks runs into a left hand by Juice Robinson, and it looks like the coin was probably involved. Now, the commentators did not mention, but most likely the coin was involved. After that, we get a Blade Runner by Jay White, and we get a cover. And Bullet Club Gold get the win with the Guns, with Jay White pinning Ricky Starks in the center of the ring. Overall, this match was phenomenal. Phenomenal match to close off Collision. The second ever AEW Collision. Everything about this was fantastic. Punk looks like he's gotten a little more comfortable in the ring, which is great to see because I was a little bit, skeptical and a little bit, nervous for CM Punk as soon as he got in the ring. And you could tell when he got into the ring with Samoa Joe, Samoa Joe was just leagues above CM Punk at this point in ring. But CM Punk definitely looked like he got more comfortable in the ring this week than last week, which is great to see. The ring rust is definitely still there, but it's much better than where he was last week. Not to say that Punk was bad last week, because he was good. It's just Punk did not wrestle as much as he did. He didn't wrestle as much last week than he did this week. Give it to you right there. FTR looked phenomenal. Ricky Starks was the one that took the pin. It sucks that Ricky Starks took the pin, but with Jay White getting the pin over Ricky Starks, if you kind of think about it, they were feuding, so it kind of makes total sense for Jay White to get the win. And for Jay White to get the win, it kind of solidifies Bullet Club Gold to be a, big top heel faction maybe in the next couple of months. I'm absolutely excited to see where the direction for Bullet Club Gold, because I remember at first when Jay White and, first debuted and he partnered himself with Juice Robinson, at first I was literally skeptical when they were, forming their own Bullet Club faction in AEW. But now with, Bullet Club Gold, with possibly adding the Guns, even though I'm not really the biggest fan of the Guns, and I'm not really the biggest fan of the Guns being a part of the group, maybe them being a part of Bullet Club Gold is not so bad after all. If you really think about it. If you think a little more closely, maybe it's not so bad after all. And who knows what other members could join Bullet Club Gold. I do think Bullet Club Gold will be the top heel faction in AEW at least within a year. That's my opinion, at least. but we're going to have to wait and see. I'm loving the direction of Bullet Club Gold. I was very skeptical at first when they first started Bullet Club Gold, but now there's direction with Bullet Club Gold, and that is exactly what you want to see, because if you have a heel faction that does not have any direction whatsoever, what is the point of having that faction? I'm glad that they're taking Bullet Club Gold seriously, and I'm glad that they're taking Jay White seriously, because he was the one that got the win in this match. If Jay White didn't look good in this match, what was really the point of bringing in Jay White? Well, if you're not going to utilize Jay White, what the fuck was the point of bringing in Jay White? But no, Jay White is definitely being protected 110%, and I said this when he first came in. Give it at least a little over a year, he will be a world champion, or at least a champion in AEW. Mark my words right there. But yeah, that was my AEW Collision review from June 24th, 2023. Overall thoughts on this show. I thought this show was fantastic. Great show. I'm actually one of the very few people that actually thought this show was actually better than last week's. Some people actually thought last week's show was better than this week's, but in my opinion, I thought this week's show was actually much better because it flowed very well. They let stuff breathe, which is very important in a wrestling show. And not only that, they're showcasing a lot of talent that normally wouldn't really be showcased in AEW. And also just the main event. The main event was fucking phenomenal. And Collision continues to differentiate itself from AEW Dynamite. And that is exactly what you want to see from this show. From a show like Collision, AEW Collision could possibly be on the verge. If they keep being on track with what they are doing now, they could possibly be on track, by being the actual A show from AEW. They're not, fuck the B show. They could possibly be on the verge of becoming the actual A show of AEW. I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, but a lot of people are actually not shying away from that idea. That's my opinion. But overall, Collision was a phenomenal show. But yeah, that was my AEW Collision review from June 24th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Push that bell for notifications to me and look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the Squared Circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And, as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys for the AEW / New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door pay-per-view review. Peace.